All right, hi there. This is my reflection, and it was actually really cool just to even go through these questions and really reflect on what I've learned in this course. So, to start, my personal strengths that I learned, it's like I knew my personal strengths, but I feel that this class has really helped just center me as a teacher and just really identifying those things that make me as a teacher. And so again, my strengths are my humor, my creativity, and my zest for life. My values are that I want to be a role model for my students, especially in working in a Title I school. They may not have that at home. And so I really want when they come to school that I am modeling what I want to see from them. And then having patience is so very important, especially when I have my block 1 and my block 2 now where I'm reteaching the same thing. And just making sure that I keep that patience centered, because I know as a struggling student when I was in elementary school, to have somebody yell anything at me never helped me learn a daggone thing. And so just remembering to have the patience for my students to have that room to learn, which goes along with my second or my third value, which is having a safe environment where my students can learn. And so that even goes as deep as saying, if we are doing, I'll go into it more deeper later, but recently we created anchor charts, and one of the students said that another student's piece was ugly. And we had an SEL meeting right then and there, because that is not what we're going to do. It's not kind. It's not how we treat people who are our friends or anyone for that matter. And it's not going to be tolerated in our classroom. And just making sure to create a culture where that type of behavior isn't allowed, because they're just doing what somebody else has done to them. And so it has to be untaught to them. So those are my strengths and my values. And then my competencies was building strong relationships with my students, and that I honestly didn't realize that other teachers didn't do this. And I feel that that's just something naturally that I'm fairly good at, is connecting with others, and especially children. I've always been great at that. So that was something I'm naturally good at, that I've been able to easily incorporate into my teaching style. And so what I've learned about myself is just what I said earlier, understanding me as a teacher, in that I didn't even realize I had a style. I thought that I was just odd, and I almost felt that I wasn't teachery enough, because everyone around me was very how teaching used to be, and they were still molded into that. And granted, I'm 32, and so I'm not 24 going into this, because I got my degree and then I didn't go straight into teaching, and then I went into teaching. And so there's just this different gap between me and people who are also my age. And I feel like it's a blessing, honestly, because I am different, but I am grateful that it is a style of teaching, and it's actually a successful style of teaching, and that building those strong relationships from the beginning, knowing my students in and out, knowing what their favorite colors are, knowing what their home life is, actively listening to them is so important if I want to help build them up, and being able to call in those things that I know they enjoy so that they can understand what I'm trying to teach. It doesn't know if one of my students is on a travel soccer team, and I know that because it's my travel soccer team, but he's on it. And so when he wasn't understanding a concept, I literally tied in the travel soccer, and I just watched that flicker of light go off. And that's not just him. I really implement that with all of my students. And so what I learned about myself is that my style of teaching is actually a successful style of teaching. Not that I'm just some weirdo doing things differently. It just seems different in the environment that I'm in. But I'm hoping that maybe it'll catch on to my fellow teachers. What kind of educator I want to be. So, given that I am a very spunky, zesty kind of person, and I love that about myself, I don't want to change that. I also want to get better at using more of my data to drive my instruction. In that last year, I was a second grade teacher, and so I really learned how to use the M-Class data to drive my instruction, especially for our win time which is like what it's called. It's what I need. I don't know if other schools have that or not, but that's what we do. And so that's like when you do your interventions and stuff. And so I would use, we use MClass and Amplify to use for progress monitoring and to get the benchmark. And so if you go into Amplify, there's a ton of resources. Anyway, long story short, now that I'm teaching 3rd grade, I want to use that same tactic for driving instruction after we have our check-ins and stuff. Like we just got done with the bog, and I want to use that data to help my students. And so one thing that I am using from it is the Lexile range, and so that I'm assigning read works based on their Lexile and then scaffolding their Lexile so that they can actually build that ability to read and how long it is and how hard it is. And I find that's really, really important, especially given what we learned about giving all these tests and then not using the information. Like, what is the reason, right? I don't want to be that kind of teacher. So I definitely want to be more data driven. Learner-centered. So that's how I define learner-centeredness, is the art of creating an environment that cultivates leadership, where the teacher is the navigator, but the students are steering/running the ship. Meaning that I want to make sure like we're navigating, we're getting where we need to get, but I really want my students being the heart of how that learning process happens. Like if we're learning main idea, I'm going to make sure we get on main idea, but it's going to be through the art of conversation, using things like Socratic seminars. Yeah, go on ahead, another question. Using things like, well, I wrote it, but I don't know if it makes sense. So using things like Socratic seminars and critical thinking and the art of debate, just like where we're discussing it and we're growing and we're molding together, and it's not just me up there giving a lecture, but more student-centered. And so one of the quotes that really resonated with me was like, I want my students to not need me to be there in order for them to learn. So I want to create an environment where they come in and I almost can just sit back and watch them as they dive into whatever we're doing that day. And that my routines are so consistent, but they still are full of humor and they have my creativity and zestiness, right? And it's a safe environment to learn, and I'm modeling what that looks like, but all of that is so consistent that they already know what to expect. And so right now I'm using ReadWorks as my warm up in my classroom. And so they come in and I have an article that has been already assigned to them. They come in, they read the article, they typed in what they learned from the article, and then they write on the sticky note. And then I have an anchor chart, and on the anchor, it's called the Book of Knowledge anchor chart, and I have their student numbers, and then these squares, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a color code on the side. And so if they read all 6 articles in the 1 week, they get to color their square for the 1 week squares, whatever color of how many they read. And the students who read 6 get a $5 Stingray book. And then on top of that, instead of just having them type in what they learned, I also give them the option to put that on a sticky note, and that sticky note goes onto the whiteboard as well. And I need to share a picture, but it's like literally filled with sticky notes on how much we learned. And then I took those responses from where they typed it online and I made that into a quiz, and it literally has their names in it as well. And so if that's not student-centered learning, I don't know what is. And so I really feel like what I really got from Unit 1 was extremely inspired on what I want my instruction to look like. And then some of the strategies that really resonated with me was the 2x10 strategy, which I already shared with my mute student. And he is not talking to me yet. However, he did do his class for me. He read to me, and I know that he likes to draw, and he's been participating more in our group things. And I ask him questions, and instead of staring at me blankly, he shakes his head yes or no. I also know that his love language is Stingray bucks, because I had to bribe him with that to get him to talk. But since that discussion, I feel like I'm getting to know him so much better, and that he is slowly but surely starting to blossom, which I'm gonna cry once it actually happens. And so some learner-centered approaches that I am using. I've learned a great deal and have been so inspired. And so something I'm doing is the ReadWorks, like I just shared with the anchor charts, and just like completely student-centered. And like I said, I had to share a picture. And then using Socratic seminar and discussion, guided discussion, critical thinking, and reasoning. And so one way that I'm using that is like in my Letterland activity. And so we'll have a list of words and they have to pick one word that doesn't fit with the rest of the words. And I remind them that there is no wrong answer. You're just proving yourself right. And so one student would stand up and they would say something like, I think that the word water is the one that doesn't belong because all the other words are solid objects. And the next student might stand up and say, well, I think that I disagree because I think the word orange doesn't go with the other words because all the other vocabulary words are things that are blue, and then the next student stands up and says why they don't agree or why they do agree. And so that is using their reasoning and that Socratic seminar and discussion all together. And then recently I did these anchor charts where I did the I am a master at, like what we did, and I had them do that for the different style text that we've learned so far, like cause and effect, scope and sequence, descriptive writing, and the main idea. And I had them, I said, who thinks that they are the master of scope and sequence? And 4 students came up, and naturally they broke off into those groups. I had them create anchor charts. I went to each group and discussed their anchor chart to make sure they fully understood the concept. And then I allowed them to research ideas on anchor charts. They made their anchor charts in their groups and then got to present them. And I was so in awe of the questions they were asking each other, the ability to go up there and discuss it. There was no bullying. It was just this harmonious ground, and it was just lovely to be in. And so that is what I'm doing, and that's what I've learned, and I can't wait to learn more.